So this morning, what we'll be talking about is a new added benefit that HBA is now going to start offering to all the members. So, guess we could jump right into the presentation.
Yeah.
So you go to the first one. So we switch over to the first page here. So again, the name of my company is Investment Consulting Services. We've been around since 2002. We specialize in working with institutional portfolios. So we have vast years of experience working with defined contribution plans, health and welfare funds, defined benefit plans, endowments, and foundations. When we started the firm, our main focus has always been to be very objective with our investment advice. We make sure that we don't have any ties with any outside parties. So when we provide investment advice to our clients, we make sure that all the money managers that we add to the investment lineup are true to their style and to make sure there's no indirect compensation going on whatsoever. That's very important to us because unfortunately, within the traditional 401k space, there's a lot of indirect dealing, which at the end of the day costs the participants, so the members, a lot of money when it comes to your retirement savings. If you go on to the second slide here. So 401ks have been around for quite some time, as you all know. But when we break it down by the availability to employees, what we have seen over the years that large employers, typically those with more than 500 employees, do in fact offer a 401k benefit to their employees. The smaller employers, unfortunately, don't have the capability of doing it only because it's been very expensive. If we move up to the next slide. So within the traditional 401k space, there's been a lot of issues. And everything in red kind of shows the main lawsuits we've been seeing over the past several years. So you can see here that there's a lot of tasks that are involved in running a 401k plan. So the plan sponsor, so in this case would be you as the employer. You can see that most importantly, we have something called the plan fiduciary responsibility. If anything goes wrong with your decisions or the decisions of the service providers that you hire, it all falls on you. You have the plan administrator or record keeper. Those usually have a 316 responsibility, but under the traditional 401k platform, typically the employer has that responsibility still. And then of course you have the investment consultant. Even though a lot of consultants say that they're fiduciary, a lot of them lack to actually acknowledge it on their contract. So again, at the end of the day, if there's any issues that come around in terms of how you're running the 401k, it falls back to the employer. Again, everything in red are the main lawsuits, and you can see here there's a lot of them. And unfortunately, what's been happening is that there's been a lot of attorneys to go around and you look for the largest 401ks recently, and now they're going more toward the mid-sized and smaller ones. And what they do is they go to a lot of participants and say, are you happy with your 401k? Do you think they're treating you properly? If you give me some chance, I can review your plan and see if there's anything wrong going on. And that's where a lot of these lawsuits have been coming up. And even some of the very large ones, you think that they have the right professionals put in place, are getting sued. Turning on to page 4. So to start up a traditional 401k plan, it's very expensive. Before you even talk about the ongoing maintenance, just a really rough number, it costs about $3,000 just to get it up and running. And then on top of the $3,000, you have to now pay for record keeping, the consultant, and all the underlying money managers. So on average, it's about 4% for a plan around $100,000 in assets. So if you today wanted to open up a 401k, right off the bat, you're looking at about, $6,950 just to start it off. And that's one of the main reasons why a lot of small to mid-sized employers have not been able to do it, just because it's just too expensive. Going to the next slide. So last year is the very first year where there was a new option available. It's called the pooled employer plan. And what it is basically, it's a 401k plan, but with a different structure. So when the Secure Act was passed in 2019, they added this new provision that basically said that various employers, whether or not they're in the same industry, could now join together to open up a grouped 401k option for their employees. So with a collaboration with the HBA, ICS, and with Securian, we did open up a new PEP plan for the HBA, where it's a new added benefit for all the members. So the main three issues, again, the traditional 401k is number one, it's very time consuming. As you saw in the other slide, there's a lot of tasks involved. And as small and mid-sized employers, we all know that you guys have really busy lives. You have to run your core business. You don't have time to run a 401k plan. Under the PEP structure, you have professionals who are actually managing for you. So when it comes to the administrative options or features, Securian is taking over that as a 316. When it comes to the investment consulting portion, my firm, ICS, is taking that as a 338. In terms of fiduciary responsibility, ICS is the named fiduciary. So in other words, under the traditional 401k, you as the employer have all the responsibility. Under the PEP plan, we're taking that responsibility away from you, and then we're taking that out. And then again, under the traditional 401k, it's very expensive. Under the PEP plan, because we're grouping everyone together, you get the economies of scale. And in addition to that, you don't have the startup costs as a traditional 401k. Because ICS, we're the ones starting the PEP, we're taking on any of those startup costs that might be associated with it. Going to the next slide. So in terms of the PEP, we have several different investment options that are available to your employees if you decide to add this new benefit to your lineup. So the first option is called full control. Basically what that means is that we have a list of different mutual funds and different distinct asset classes, and you're allowed to pick and choose which ones you want and what allocations. So basically build your own portfolio based on your choosing. The second option, go to page 7, is target date funds. So basically what this means is if you're not comfortable choosing the investment options on your own, what you can do is choose a target date fund, which are all offered by Schwab. And the years following the name, it gives you an idea of when you expect to retire. So let's say you expect to retire around the year 2050. Just go ahead and choose a 2050 fund. And over time, Schwab's money managers will reallocate your assets based on your age. So if you go to page 8, here's a good illustration of how this works. So depending on how many years you are from retirement, you can see that you're more aggressive by having more in equities. And then over time, as you approach closer to your target date, you can see that it gets more conservative and more conservative. Because again, we don't want to have too much equity within your portfolio, just in case, like we saw this month, when the market starts to sell off. So they kind of control the asset allocation for you. It's more of a set it and forget it type of mentality. So we also offer that. Page 9, we also have what we call risk-based portfolio options. So what this is where you have all the same investment options on the previous page. But let's say, for instance, you want to be very aggressive. All you have to do is choose the very aggressive option, and automatically we allocate the assets based on that option. If someone was very conservative, just say, I want to be very conservative, and boom, automatically we do the allocations for you. Then the next option we have, page 10, is called a managed account. So with Secure Financial, they've also partnered up with a firm called Stadium Money Management. And what they do is they basically build a customized portfolio to your employee. And the way they do that is they take all the information over here on the left-hand side. So what's their age, where do they live, what's their life expectancy, and a whole bunch of other items. And then any other items that they want to give to Stadium. They take all this information and build a custom portfolio. So if we go to page 11, it's very similar to the Schwab targeting funds, where you see this kind of like glide path where as you approach retirement, it gets more conservative and more conservative. But everyone's gonna have something different based on their own goals and objectives. Now, if an employee wants to choose this option, there is an additional fee of 0.25%. Just to keep that out there. But again, that's another option, just kind of provide more flexibility to your employees. Slide 12. So here's a complete lineup of all the investment options. But here you can also kind of show all the fees. So At ICS, we've always focused on not only how much risk our clients are taking, but also how much money they're paying for their investments. At the end of the day, when you look at your portfolio, depending on how much you're paying in fees, you have a huge outcome of how much money you have once you're retired. So because we have a lot of relationships over the years with large money managers due to the other pension funds we work for, where we work on, we're able to get better cost pricing. So on this column here, you can see all the investment options. The second column, expense ratio, that tells you how much the manager is charging you to be in that mutual fund. And then credits back to the participant. That's something that's somewhat unique within the space because a lot of times, if you look at a mutual fund, say you go to Morningstar, and let's say you look up this Fidelity Emerging Markets Index Fund. For those who know what a prospectus is, it's basically a 200-page document that the money manager sends out, gives you all the disclosures, what the mutual fund's about, what the fees are. Usually buried in there tells you exactly the breakdown of the fees that you're paying. You'll see that Fidelity is charging you 0.08%. And then right below that, you'll see something around sub-TA credits or 12B1 fees. And that's usually around, in this case, be 0.13%. Traditionally speaking, what happens is that 0.13 goes to the consultant, the record keeper, or some other third party for offering the service to you. We never believe that money should go to someone else. We always think they should go back to the participant, so your employee who is invested in this option. So the reason why we partner up with Securian is because they also have the same belief as we do, where we want to make sure every penny that could go back to the participant goes back to them. So in this scenario, that 0.13% goes back to your participant. So once you take into account that credit, you could actually see that the net expense is negative. So in other words, if you have an employee who chooses that investment option, they're actually getting back an additional 0.05% for being in there. It's basically a free investment option for them. Now, again, these numbers can always change because on a yearly basis, sometimes even quarterly, these mutual fund companies could change the 12B1s and the sub-TA credits. But as of right now, this is the total net expense on the far right of what each employee is going to be paying if they choose this investment option. Another thing to kind of mention is because of the relationships we have with various investment firms, we're also able to get into share classes that are not usually available to smaller sized defined contribution plans. So what I mean by that is taking into account the Johnson Institutional Core Bond. So the way this works in the mutual fund world, the more money you have, the lower the fee is going to be. For the institutional core bond, you need to have at least a couple $1 million just to be in it. Because the PEP plan has 0 assets as of right now. We did speak with Johnson, again, because we had them in some other portfolios we work with, some other larger pension funds. They allowed us to go into the institutional one, even though we don't have any assets right now. So if you went to the A share class, which is the one for mainly retail investors, rather than paying 0.25, we'll be paying about 0.45. It's almost double. So again, that's the cost savings we're able to bring to this plan. And then lastly, if you look at the Cohen Steers, that's the one real estate security mutual fund that's done very well. And for that reason, they're completely closed, which means if you went to a Schwab, an Edward Jones, or one of those other broker dealers, you were trying to get into that fund, you wouldn't be able to. But we can, because the relationships we had, they allowed us to add it to the plan for your benefit. So that's the reason why we were able to get it. Any questions about anything so far? Okay. So move on to the next slide. So costs. So this is just an assumption that's saying that you have absolutely no money right now in the 401k. You want to do a complete startup. You have 2 employees. How much is this going to cost us? So right now, based on these assumptions, you're looking at about $4,700. And just for full disclosure, that $4,700 is comprised of the fees from the record keeping side, the administrative costs of running the plan for your company, and also again, because this is a new added benefit by the HBA, there's costs that are associated to run this. So there's a one-time fee of $500. So that gives you a total of $4,700. Now let's assume year 2, the assets grow just a little bit. You're looking at around about $4,200 because that one-time $500 fee, again, goes away after year 2. But again, the main components here is that for paying the $4,700, there's no additional startup cost. All the 401k functions are outsourced to ICS and to Securian. And we take on all the fiduciary responsibility of running the plan. Now, when you compare this to the traditional 401k, you're looking more about $7,000 to start off. And another thing too is because under the PEP plan, the more employers are involved in that, we get economies of scale. So as the assets keep on growing, the overall fee structure starts to decrease. As your plan grows as well, your administrative costs also start to go down. So that's the advantages there. And then finally, within the Secure Act, they have increased the tax credits for small employers. So for those who have absolutely no 401k plan as of right now, and let's say today you want to open one up, there are some tax credits that you'll be able to qualify for, which overall helps reduce that initial cost. Any questions?
Does anybody have a plan today? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So they take advantage of too, if your plan's at automatic enrollment and you're kind of a small business, I would consider adding it just for the credit, right? Even if you don't work with us, I mean, it's a good, exactly. I mean, employees want to be told what to do, right? I mean, left to their own devices, they typically, their decision is either, if they don't jump in, they never jump in. So push them in and then they'll stay in. And then you get the credit for doing it.
Okay. And for those who already have a 401k, so if you are interested in just getting an idea of what the cost would be in comparison, just reach out to us and we'll be able to do is look at your plan documents, see exactly what you're paying for record keeping, administrative. I don't know if you do or do not have an investment consultant. If you do, are you a fiduciary of that responsibility? We just see how much you're paying for the money managers and give you a fair apples to apples comparison to what you're getting and what you're paying for. So you have a good idea. So I'm going to hand over to Dave.
I got a question for you, Eric, actually. So let's say, like these smaller companies or companies that already have an established 401k wanted to set something up too, who would they call?
You can call me directly. I have my business card here.
Yeah.
And what we'll do is I'll ask for some information. Then I'll work with Dave and we'll put together a quote rather quickly. And that could kind of walk you through line item by line item so you know exactly what the cost would be. And, if you decide to move forward, what the steps would be to transfer all the assets. Yes.
So in our company, we've used a, like a SEP plan but that's predominantly benefited owners or some, real long-term employees, that I think that qualification is, 3 of the last 5 years or something like that.
Yeah.
So your rank and file employees don't really
benefit.
That's not here nor there to them. If a person wanted to do this, what are the options if for those that are sort of vested in the SEP concept? I mean, that's good for them.
Mm-hmm.
For those that aren't, this might be very better. Can you have both within a company, and how does that work?
No, I can't. Okay. Yeah, so it's called a competing plan role.
Okay.
So you can either have either or. So if they wanted to do a 401k, it would have to be a startup on January 1st of 2023. Yeah, kind of the rule of thumb, if I was talking, is it okay? Yeah. So the rule of thumb that I usually have is that SEPs are usually good for family-owned businesses, right? Because you got to give the same percentage to all employees, or paternalistic owners, right? That want to make sure that everybody benefits. 401k gives you a little bit more flexibility in terms of, if you want to recruit and retain, because you can add eligibility investing. And then also you can kind of control the percentages that get put out. It just offers the business a lot more flexibility, right? And then you can, because like in a 401k plan, you can do January 1st, or you can do 1 year and 1,000 hours, and you got to be 21. Yeah, I think the danger with the SEP is that 500 hours for 3 consecutive years and they're in, right? There's no vesting, right? They're 100% vested from day one. Yeah, but they would have to, it's either or.
Typically too, like business owners right now too, if they only had a couple employees on this too, would they essentially be presenting these kind of opportunities to them and kind of manning that plan, or how is that usually working like with a traditional 401k?
I'm sorry.
Would they, like, as a business owner, do they essentially, like, a new employee starts on and they present them, hey, we have a 401k option here too? Are they mainly managing that setup and all that stuff?
No,
How does that usually work?
I don't know. So what they'll do is they'll let us know we have a new employee and security will handle all the legwork doing that for you, setting them up.
So for those that have the plan, is anybody dealing with the plan on a daily basis?
Yeah.
So you know all the work that goes with it.
I do all the year-end reporting,
Oh.
all of it, so, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot, plus I pay the bank that we work with
Yeah.
quarterly fee to manage it, so
Yeah.
that's where I'm kind of trying to look at where we can promote
Yeah.
some of our costs, because it's an investment, my time, it's an investment every 2 weeks of payroll.
Yeah,
You know, it's additional reporting and contribution, which isn't a big deal, it's more the year-end means
Year-end.
testing that.
you should never have to do anything in your end. Because ideally, you're providing all that information every time you do payroll.
Yeah.
And if I'm accumulating that information on the record keeping system, why am I asking it for you again? Like, why am I asking you again for that information? So in our scenario, sponsored by the HBA, is that the only thing you're gonna have to do is remit contributions through payroll.
Okay.
Right? And yeah, exactly, yeah. I was like, who used to have the easy button as their commercial?
Yeah.
Was it like Office? People or something like that? Yeah, Staples, something like that. I mean, that's the whole idea behind this solution is easy, right? And like Eric mentioned, there is, and we didn't call each other to dress in blue. This is all coincidence. This is, I feel like we're like the Men in Black. But yeah, I mean, the whole idea behind this solution is to take as much of the day-to-day responsibility so that you can really focus on revenue producing tasks, right? Like running your business, building relationships, all those different things that you have. Because 401ks have not, even though their popularity is soared, right? So they've been around since 1981. We're probably have the first generation of people that are finally retiring, where their sole retirement investment has been a 401k. So that's starting to happen now. I think going forward, it's going to be the only, right? But it's gotten more complicated, right? Because like Eric mentioned, the lawsuits that are happening are crazy. Because they're attacking typically big employers for conflicts of interest, investment costs, and all that. So like, if you're a small company, why would you want the hassle, right? So that's where we kind of fit is that, so I work for Securian, which is your neighbor, like we're Minnesota Life. We're located in St. Paul, Minnesota. And we've never been sued. Doesn't mean that we can't. There actually is a very huge lawsuit. If you guys want to drive yourself crazy, like do a little 401k lawsuits. There's a very big provider getting sued for exactly what Eric talked about when it came to like conflicts of interest and revenue sharing. Of one of my competitors is getting sued, and we're actually mentioned in the lawsuit as an example of what they should be doing. They're like, well, we're competing against this other record keeper. Securian said that they could do this. Hancock said that should have mentioned it. And other provider said that it didn't matter. And now they're in a class action lawsuit. So like our job is to protect you from a fiduciary perspective without really you having to worry about it. And do the right thing by you and your employees. Right. And make it easy.
So then right now I'm paying somebody else, I think it's quarterly,
Is it a TPA, like a third party administrator?
well, for the means testing and all of that kind of.
Yeah.
So then those fees would not,
They still exist, but they would actually just be paid it would be like a bundled scenario where security and we just bill annually. Yeah. That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean that fees go away. You know, our goal is, it really is just trying to make your life a little bit easier.
Backing up to this pool employer plan, is that just for home builders or is it also outside of that? And then are those fees percentages based on the amount of assets and or employers in the plan, or how are those?
Sure. So the pool employer plan right now is set up by the HBA, so it's going to be, it's a member only benefit.
So then if you leave the membership, this does not, you cannot continue with it, is it right?
Correct, yeah.
So then your money would have to be rolled into somebody else, Fidelity off the side, Edward Jones, whatever that.
Yeah, whichever other options, yeah.
Yeah, or we'd have to spin you into like a single employer setting.
So, yeah, I mentioned like a SEP plan. If a person wanted to do just what you're proposing here, and transition from the SEP and say, okay, on all future years, we're gonna do this.
Yeah,
Would we be eligible for those tax credits since we haven't had a 401k before?
well, I definitely would talk to an accountant, right? The way that I read the Secure Act is that you already have a plan.
Okay.
And that you probably wouldn't be eligible for it. So in order to get some credits, I would definitely just add auto enroll to get a benefit there. So you get like, $500 in terms of the tax credit, but I would talk to an accountant. Is that the way you read it too? Is it too? Yeah. Yeah.
But I guess the way I was looking at it was, although we have a plan that isn't available to most of our employees, because the sad thing is in our business, a lot of employees haven't made it to the 3-year mark, much less the 5-year mark, depending on their hours.
Yeah.
And so we could make a pretty sound argument for, we do not have a plan available to 90% of people that have
Oh, I
worked for us
agree.
in the last 5 years. So you think we'd have to talk to an accountant to find out if that could meet the
Yeah,
definition?
I would double check to see if it meets it, just because unlike your state, I'm from Chicago. The state of Illinois is, I don't know if you read about it, it's pretty awful. But the state of Illinois has if you have more than 5 employees and you've been in business for more than 2 years, if you don't have a retirement plan, you have to join the state of Illinois plan. And they manage it. You know, I always joke around. I said I would let the state of Illinois walk my dog, let alone, manage my retirement assets. I think that's the reason why the Secure Act is written the way that it is because so that it wouldn't compete against the state sponsored plans necessarily. So that's why I think they get this broad coverage of any type of plan, whether it's a SEP, simple, or you're in the state plan, as counting as you have a plan. Right, so that's why I think that it wouldn't qualify. So you guys want to get into the securing?
One
So
quick thing too, I was gonna ask, just so for everybody kind of knows too, can you define, I mean, your relationship that you guys have had ICS with the Home Builder Association?
So we started off, it was 2009 when we got hired to advise on the health and welfare fund. And then last year, we got some more relationships. We're now the consultant on the Home Builders Care and as well as the HBA General Fund. So we have been having a long-standing relationship with the HBA. It's been great to be working with the group. So it's been a long-standing relationship.
So you want to, yeah, so I'm not as good as Eric was. Oh, sure, with slide that I'm on. So who's been to Twin Cities? Anybody? All right. Yeah. So we're in St. Paul, Minnesota. The joke is always it took them like 70 years to put their names on the building in downtown St. Paul because we're kind of like a quiet company that don't like to brag. And then when the CFO was driving in and he saw when they finally put the sign up that said Securian, he went into the office management and said, "Can you turn on the lights? It's too bright." Right. So yeah, we're a very kind of quiet company. But if you can go to the next slide, I think jump a couple in. So we've been around since 1880. we've been doing retirement plans since 1930. You know, we had 6,500 associates, about 5,400 of them are in downtown St. Paul. So I think we're the largest employer in St. Paul outside of government, St. Paul government. You know, so it's not surprising if you bump into a relative that lives in St. Paul that they might work at Securian. We're Fortune 500. A lot of people don't know that, so we're big. So 21 million customers. You know, if you put that in perspective, that means 1 out of every 17 Americans uses Securian for some sort of benefit. And probably most of you guys have never heard of us, right? So we're big in the group life side. You know, so if you provide life insurance for your employees through a group setting, we're big in the 401k business. We're also do individual business and like individual investments and annuities. 8th largest insurance company in the U.S. But I think what's most important for you is that we're a mutual company. Does anybody know what that means? We're owned by our customers, right? So we're not publicly traded. It's like if you have a life insurance policy with Securian, you actually are considered an owner. So like if we ever went public and produced, you actually would get stock in exchange for that life policy. And what that means is that we look at everything from a fiduciary perspective. So when companies like ICS and the HBA are looking to develop partnerships, I think the reason why they come to Securian is because there's no conflicts of interest. You know, we always look at everything from the perspective of what is best for our employees, or for your employees, and for you as a business owner. Can you go to the next? All right. So you guys all, what is the #1 industry magazine? So trade magazine for your industry. Is there one? Do you guys produce one? I didn't know. All right. So nerds like me that do the retirement plans, Plan Sponsor magazine, which you guys all read, right? Plan Sponsor. No. For those that have a plan. All right. So for Plan Sponsor magazine is our industry rag. And every year they do a survey. They ask, you know, different companies like what do you like about your plan? And they judge it for participant services and for employer services, and Securian routinely gets the most best-in-class cups. So basically our clients are telling the market that we provide a wonderful experience. So we've had 20, I think there's 22 categories, 23 categories. That means a best-in-class cup in each one of the categories. But I'm more proud of like the net recommendation rate, because I think that's a real measure of what your clients feel, is that 83% of the people that responded to the survey said that they would act as a referral. You know, so it's always good to be like, oh, you guys are really good. Like, would you recommend us? Well, I don't know. But 83% is a pretty big number. So our clients are willing to speak on our behalf. I actually literally just got a call 2 weeks ago. They called me direct. How did you get my number? And she's like, oh, well, our plan, I used to work with this other employer, and their plan was with Securian. She was like, I didn't think of anybody else, right? So you'll get addicted to the service, you'll get addicted to the people. Because we're, you know, even though we have wonderful technology, you don't have people to talk to. Like, you know, I think always when somebody talks about their website or their mobile capabilities and all that, it's great. But when I get a problem, I want to be able to pick up the phone and call somebody. And that's what Securian is. Like, we're not, technology doesn't replace the people. So can you go to the next one? So I did mention mobile. So most of your employees, how are they going to look at their 401k plan? On their phone, right? You know, I don't know. I don't know last time I looked up something on the computer, right? It's always on my phone. So Delbar is a company that manages like web experience and customer service. #1 online enrollment experience. #2 for mobile enrollment. So your employees can actually enroll on their phone. So when you tell them that they're eligible, they can do it pretty easy. And then the statement, which unfortunately nobody looks at anymore, right? But we were number 4 in terms of the statement. Next one, retention's off the charts, 98%. So mentioned like you guys had plans right all in the middle. Do you know how long you've been with your current record keeper? But perfect. We didn't rehearse this, did we? So on average, a company stays with a record keeper for 7 years, right? We keep clients on average for 15. And it's because of some of the services thing we'll talk about later. So that's a big number. Like retention, most record keepers like float in that 93 to 98. If you're anywhere below that, you're bad. But the big number is like how long you keep your clients, and we destroy them. That usually comes to how long we keep your clients. One more. All right. So Eric talked about structure. Does this make sense? Like, so I don't know if there's a pool employer plan. So prior to the Secure Act, we could never do this. Because we'd have to do it through a multiple employer setting. And somebody would have to take, like somebody here in this room would have to stand up and say, I'll sponsor the plan that everybody can join. And then who would want to do that, right? So ICS is willing to do that. Like, so Eric's firm is willing to say, we're the plan sponsor. They're going to do the investment management. Security is going to do 316 services. So I'm going to give you a little bit of that. And then we're also going to be the record people as well. So let me give you some ideas. So you mentioned year end. Who signs the 5,500 annual tax? All right, go on. Right in the setting. No longer have to do the 5,500 because there's only one, and it's ICS. And they sign it. Right. So, and it's actually a huge hurdle. So part of the Secure Act, which got neglected. So if anybody has a company that's required to have an annual ERISA audit, there's no such thing as a limited scope audit anymore. That's gone. So an auditor might ask you, can I rely on the service provider's SOC report? And you have to answer that question. Right. So you're taking fiduciary responsibility for that. And then on a 5,500, when you're signed to 5,500 now, you're signing off on the timeliness and the accuracy. How do you know that that information is right? You're just assuming that it's right. In our scenario, Eric's firm is signing that. They're signing off on the timeliness and accuracy. So if the DOL comes knocking, they talk to ICS and Securian. They don't talk to anybody who's a member of the plan. Yeah. So next one. So flexibility, you won't lose any of your flexibility. So if your plan is matching, vesting, profit sharing, no profit sharing, we're not going to put you in handcuffs in terms of like what type of benefit you want to provide to your employees. If you go to the next one, the only thing we're going to ask is that you keep these features. But this is not a big deal, right? This is nothing. Like normal retirement age 65. You got to allow for Roth, after-tax contributions, and all those things. But this is nothing. That's really more admin than design.
But this might be a good time to say, I actually brought a question with me.
Yeah.
When I was looking at possibly doing a 401 on my own.
Yeah.
Before I had ever heard about this, and converting out of what I have.
Yeah.
The 4 features that we were discussing and how to improve my wife's 401 that we contribute to at Herbert.
Nice.
Was, does the plan allow for after-tax contributions? Was the
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Does it allow for Roth contributions? I think you're
Yes.
saying yes. Does it allow for in-service conversions?
Yep.
And does it allow in-service after-tax withdrawals?
Yes. You can always withdraw after-tax money.
Okay.
After-tax contributions, don't read those articles. Don't, like they're like when you see them in the financial, like, if you're reading Google News and it's under the finance section, after-tax contributions don't work. The only time they work is if you have very few highly compensated employees. So if you're so highly compensated is less than 130,000, I think, in incomes, that's all right, or 130. It's good because if you get in the weeds, like for testing a little bit, if you go, an after-tax contribution is actually considered a match. Even though it's not the employer making it, it's the employee making it. So you end up, like if you're an owner of a company and you make an after-tax contribution, unless you have really tons of non-highly compensated employees in the plan, you end up getting the money back. You basically put in the plan, and at the end of the year, we just give it right back to you.
Right.
So it doesn't make so if your wife works for like Sanford, right? You know, that's the only example of a big company I got down here. But she works for Stanford. She absolutely could make after-tax contributions because they probably have thousands of employees. But for in the small business setting, you need one owner and like 15 non-highly compensated employees for it to work. Yeah, so it's a great idea. And a lot of, like, if you work with a, you know, an advisor at the bank, you know, your local bank, or you know, you get a local advisor that you work with, or you know, it's buddy, they'll recommend it a lot. And then you'll try to do it, and your employer will be like, stop, you can't do it. It's there, but don't do it. Yeah. But Roth works. Roth is the better way to kind of do it. Because after tax too, it's expensive. Because you really are paying the taxes, you know, putting that money in, and you just have to get more flexibility there. It's better off to do it through Roth.
But I think one of the reasons why, or the conversation was at when these questions were brought up, was if you have a situation where you have an employee that's in a 401k plan at their work, and their spouse is a doctor making 300 grand a year,
Yeah.
and they don't qualify any longer to do a Roth IRA
Yeah.
or a traditional IRA. And so they're essentially, it's kind of, it's like a mechanism to a backdoor Roth in a way,
Yeah.
but done a
Exactly.
different way. And so I think that was the context of the question.
That's great.
So,
Yeah, it's great.
because we may employ people that have a spouse that
Yeah.
is a doctor at Stanford or something.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you know, they could use that as a vehicle. So that's
Yeah, no, that's a great example. But so remember too, like so for the Roth 401k, there is no AGI. So like if you're contributing to like a Roth IRA, you've got what does AGI stand for again?
Adjusted gross income.
Adjusted gross income. Adjusted gross income, it's got to be less than a certain dollar.
You
amount.
space out, yeah.
Yeah, but in a 401k, there is no AGI.
Okay.
So like if I wanted to put away 20,500 after tax, which would be pretty expensive to kind of do that, right? Yeah, I could do it regardless of how much me and my spouse make.
And can you do that in a single year, or would you still be subject to the
Single year.
6,000, whatever you would do, like if you're doing it on a regular contribution?
Yeah, it's 20. Yeah, 401k is different. There's no AGI. Yeah.
Alright.
So like, yeah, so like in your scenario, I'm not a financial planner, I'm not a tax, I'm not an accountant. But if I had one spouse that made all the money, I would be funneling all my money. Like if I was like the, you know, if my wife made a ton more money than me, I'd be doing Roth like crazy. Yeah. All right, so next slide. All right, so let's talk about the pain. Whose 401k plan has loans? No loans? Oh, you should get a big hug because it's fantastic. But no, loans are a necessary evil because most employees want to be like, well, I'll contribute once if I need it, right? Which I get. Also, there's a huge, does everybody know that there's a first-time home buyers? Yeah. So if you, for primary residence, so typically a loan is $1,000 for 50% of your vested balance. That's like the minimum requirements of the dollar amount, and that's kind of general purpose loan. You can also take a 401k loan and amortize it for the life of your mortgage. If it's for primary residence, right? So securing, you'll have the loan provision for general purpose and then primary residence. But loans are typically paid through payroll deduction, right? So like if you're doing payroll, you gotta put in the amortization schedule like this, you know, Bob needs to pay back $100 a month, and you know, you've got to manage that. At Securian, you never have to do that. We actually allow loan repayments to become directly subtracted from an employee's bank account. So you're never playing banker. You never have to worry about loans. So it's a great deal for you as the employer, incredible deal for the employee, because if they become separated from service, like they leave your company, it doesn't become taxable because they can continue to repay. It's a big deal. There's only one other record keeper in the whole country. I think there's 300 record keepers that does this. And we did it with the employee in mind.
So do you directly work with that employee
Yeah.
on their loan so that essentially the employer is left out of that whole process?
I should have explained it the way you just did.
Because, okay, because I had a situation where an employee left our employment.
Yeah.
And then I got a notice from the company that we work with, not
to deem it.
The group
Yeah,
that we work with, and they said, oh, this employee has a loan and you haven't been repaying it. Well, he's no longer an employee.
yeah,
So it falls on me now quarterly. They've changed their process that I have to, by the seventh of the month following the quarter, I have to go into their website to look at my employees, to make sure that I'm not,
yeah.
that they're up to date. So, I mean, it all falls back to me. And I had no idea this guy had a loan.
Yeah, you'll never have to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, we automatically deem the loans. So it's usually, yeah, it's like quarter after. So if I don't make a payment in February.
Yeah.
I have until June 30th to bring it up to, and if I don't, then it becomes a taxable event.
Mhm.
And then the taxes on that, it's like 50% total once you do all of it, because there's a penalty and then your normal income tax. And that just will demolish your savings, right? So, and most people, when they switch jobs, they let that loan go because they don't have a mechanism to pay it back. And that's, I always go back to like 08, 09, like even for friends of mine that were, economy was crumbling, and they're like, yeah, I can't leave my job because I have a loan. Right, and that's awful. So we allow people to, some flexibility there. Also, if you get employees in the wind, terminated, no longer work for you, it's your job to keep track of them. And maybe that person left and you don't want to ever talk to them again. Right? So all return mail goes to St. Paul, Minnesota. We do all the lost employee searches for free. Right. And then distributions. So think about COVID. So there was a lot of hardship distributions that took place. When you do a hardship, it's up to the employer to qualify that. I don't know how many people want to talk to their employees about, I'm getting kicked out of my house, I got medical bills I can't pay. So we do all of that. So if somebody says, hey, I need money, you say, that's fantastic, call security. Right. And then last, thanks to the government, IRS, DOL, you've got all these notices. They made it a little easier. You can now email them, right? If they've got a corporately sponsored email address or that they provided to you as an employer. I know most employees don't want to give you their private email address, right? We'll actually do all your notices, no additional cost. So the idea is, let us do the stuff that, because Eric's mentioning, most of the lawsuits out there in the 401k side have nothing to do, or all have to do with the investments, right? There are very few. All those cases settle, right? Nobody wins like a judgment. It typically, because the record keeper, the institution's like, we want our name out of the paper. So what do you guys want? You guys want $100 million to get this to go away, right? So they end up settling. Where you're more likely to get in trouble as a small business owner is all of this stuff. The day-to-day admin, IRS, Department of Labor. Like the worst news you ever get is when the DOL knocks in and says, hey, I'm just in town. I was at Sanford doing an audit. I noticed you have a plan. You got 5 minutes. Because that's what they do, right? And they'll ask you, hey, what's your process for keeping track of terminated employees? It's a process, not a problem. Quit. I have no idea where he's at. Well, great, because I know your documented process. That's what you do to stay in touch with Bob. Because he still has a balance with you, right? So it's just like uncomfortable stuff. Let us do it. Take it out from there. What's the next one? One more. All right. This I think will make you guys super happy. How many of your companies have financial wellness? All right. Because of our relationship with HBA and ICS, you're going to get this for free. Right. So who has trouble recruiting and retaining? Anybody have trouble recruiting or retaining employees? We all do, right? It's a great, what do they call it? Great migration. So you're going to get online financial wellness through Enrich. So if I'm an employee, I log on to the Securian website, I click a button, it takes me to Enrich. Enrich is anything from debt management to college planning. So all the tenets of financial planning are there. So if you don't have time or you don't want to talk to somebody like an advisor or something like that, it will walk you through it. I mentioned it's kind of like a combination of Amazon and Netflix. So it's like Amazon because it uses AI, right? So artificial intelligence looks at what you're looking at. So if I keep looking for college planning, it's going to start pulling content for college planning. And then it's like Netflix does it. It can be customized. right? So, you know, how Netflix gives your, you know, your suggestions and what you should watch and all that. It will start doing that. It's wonderful. It's free. Who has an employee assistance program? Right? You're gonna get that as well, right? So through LifeWorks, it is a Fortune 500 benefit. And the reason why I tell you that, it's the exact same benefit I have at Security. So I don't have anything better than what we're offering to your employees. It's online or over the phone, financial, legal, free counseling. Or if they have substance problems, right, you can call that number and they can refer you, to a number or to a local support. You literally can go online and create a will, a trust. You got rental property. You can get rental agreements that are state specific. I didn't know that in Illinois, you needed a contract to sell a horse, but you do, right? So there is a horse agreement there. So it is, you'd be shocked about what's available there. I had a client in Wisconsin, it used to be part of the Wisconsin healthcare system. And so during COVID, HR called me and she goes, remember that program that you talked about that we said we didn't need? Because they were big and they were supportive and all that type of stuff. And she's like, can you guys turn it on? Because my employees are dying from, because they actually supported people with special needs. And there's a lot of people dying. They're like, we need to talk to somebody. Our employees need to talk to them pre-counseling. So don't discount that. It's huge. Student loan, I will mention it. Not a lot of people use it. That does cost money. And that's if you're a business owner and you wanted to match like student loan payments. But it's important to have that because the government's going to make that legal, right? Don't you think? Secure Act 2.0. So if I'm a business owner, I will, if I have a match, it's going to be part of your 401k now, or I could actually, if you say, I'm going to match you dollar for dollar on the first 2%. If I'm an employee that puts 1% into the 401k, your employer is going to be able to take those unallocated match dollars and use it to offset your student loans. They're going to make it part of ERISA. Yeah. So, I don't know. We'll see. Okay. Student loan problems is a big deal. And that's a main reason why younger employees say they can't save. Like I can't save because I spent, I gotta pay back Sally Mae. So next one. All right. So here's the fun thing. Who's got their phone? I'm glad that you guys weren't looking at your phone and listen to us. That's good, right? If you text the word RPDEMO1 to 70774, you're going to get the websites. You'll get the employer website, the employee website. You'll be able to kind of tool around, just kind of compare it if you got an existing plan to see what it looks like compared to what you currently have. You'll get what the mobile site, if you go on the participant site, you'll get what the mobile site looks like. Because we got an app. I don't know how big of a need it is for you guys locally. Our website and our app are in Spanish as well. So as we get a Spanish speaking need, it's available. But just thought I'd tool around. There's a beauty, like our participant website, there is where your employees would go on. There's a beauty in its simplicity. You'd be surprised, there's a company out there that maybe has tons of commercials and you see them on TV all the time. Their website is so complicated. So complicated. And what happens when somebody goes on a complicated website? They do nothing, right? Most reason why the employees go to a website is, how am I doing? What's my rate of return? And what's my balance? And those things are front and center. Because the truth is that most employees, when they want to do something like take a loan or a distribution, they're not going to do it online. They're going to call, right? So when they call, all the calls go to St. Paul. We don't outsource anywhere. Actually, I think we are our one over, if there's too many calls, there's a call center here in the Dakota somewhere where they get our overage calls. And 70% of the calls are answered in 30 seconds. Average talk time is 5 minutes, which means that we're not rushing employees on the phone. Right? We're actually having conversations. And they're experienced professionals. One of the big things, one of the good things and bad things about Securian is that people never leave. Like once you get a job at Securian, they stay there forever. So everybody that you're going to talk to on the phone, don't be surprised if you're like, small talking with them, that they've been there for 26 years. Right? So they've seen everything, they've heard everything. Your employee, they're never going to tell your employees like, well, that's a good one. I don't know the answer to it. It's usually like, oh yeah, I know the answer to that. So next one. Oh, yeah, I don't know if we have this, but conversions, 401k plans are, converting 401k plans are not easy. More because of the time, right? And the time is there just because of the government. The government tells us that we have to follow certain rules. So, convert a 401k plan takes like 4 months, but there's a lot of hurry up and wait, right? You do a lot of work on the front end, meaning just we need an hour and a half to talk to you, to walk through your plan document. And then we need to schedule meetings to educate your employees, and then we wait for the assets to come. So I would say that you're, outside of like emailing us correct information, it probably is 2.5 hours of your time. Or we're gonna ask you a lot of questions during those 2.5 hours. But it's important to take that feedback, make sure everything's done right. And that's all I got. Anybody have any questions? So you three have, 4 have plans currently, you've got the SEP. Is anybody, so you guys are all participants in plans. What frustrates you the most? Is there frustration? It's the year end.
So, well, the best part about it is we go through Empower
Yeah,
is who we use.
yes,
Their staff is fantastic. If I have a question, I call, I get an answer. When I'm doing all of the means testing, it's once a year.
Yeah.
I have questions I can't remember from year to year. So
yeah,
they have been wonderful to work with. The in-between people, we have not had someone who's at that level been representing our, working with us. So
yeah, don't have
When-
like a dedicated service.
yeah, so we don't have a contact. So I have a new employee or I have people that have questions and I'm kind of scrambling to find who do I call. And so that has been a frustration for me. I would like to be left out of all of it. I like the idea and the concept of the fact that I just can provide you the basic information
Yeah.
and I don't have to worry about it
Do
because
you have payroll integration currently?
no, we manually do all of it.
Yeah.
So, we run our payroll and then we take the totals and payroll summary and we upload to Empower
Okay,
directly. And which isn't a big deal. It's a 5-minute process, but
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with the things that I don't know about because I'm not professional.
So in the solution, obviously you do what's right for your company and, we're not here to tell you one way is better than the other. But one of the advantages of like our solution that we put together with HBA and ICS is that you will have a dedicated person at
Yeah.
Securian, name, number, extension, email address. They're going to become your best friend.
Yeah.
So Empower's, there's a penalty that comes with scale,
Mhm.
right? Is that when you get scale as an organization, like when it becomes huge, is that you can't spend the money to hire experienced professionals. And that's what Securian's not. We're not in the game of, we don't want to do the biggest and baddest. Otherwise we'd be cheap, right? And then all the benefits, right? People would choose us over somebody else, would go away. So the difference is going to be the experience level and the dedication.
And I appreciate that because I think there have been a lot of times that, you're going, huh, oh, that's right.
And
To the
Empower's
best
a good
of my
company.
knowledge, I know that I have answered these questions correctly. And I just don't want that burden anymore.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and you shouldn't, right? Because if it was an easy business, you wouldn't need us. Right? Everything would be done online and you'd say, great, here it is, good luck. The government just continues to make it more complicated, right? Which is, and then they want to penalize you when you don't do it right. Right, which is crazy. Anything?
They're very similar situations, same power, same go-between. You sign documents in the end of the year and you're wondering if you got everything in there, but you're still, yeah, to relieve the fiduciary duty would be
So-
the goal.
So there must be a local advisor that loves Empower that's putting all you guys in Empower.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we're working with the same, but, yeah, I don't know. We had another plan that just wasn't performing, and so then
Yeah.
my husband got hooked up with a group that steered us that direction, and it was a huge improvement.
Yeah,
But now that we're doing it, I'd like to see a little different scenario. So,
yeah. And if
and
you,
that's okay.
and if you haven't, and the recommendations every couple of years, 2-3 years, to take it out to bid regardless.
Okay.
Because then if the DOL would say, if they walked in, which you never know, right? Is they'd say, when's the last time you benchmarked your plan?
Mhm.
You can go and say, oh, well, I was at the association meeting and we got HBA and we compared it against that and we decided to stay put or we decided to move, right? So they'll ask for, like, how do you know your fees are? Because they ask, the Department of Labor never says that your fees have to be the cheapest, right? Your fees have to be reasonable. Reasonable compared to what? Right? So always good idea every couple of years. Even if you've got to like your company and you love your advisor, say, hey, let's go market. Right? And then you're like, why are you making me do this? It's like, just get a couple of proposals. We just want to make sure, either you could turn the screws on Empower a little bit, or, you could talk to Eric and, figure out what's best for you guys.
See, and ours is a much smaller company. I actually run everything through Edward Jones for a number of years.
Yes.
Not an accountant, but again, it's the fees that some of my employees question and, the overall costs to run it and that sort of thing. So it's something I've been thinking about,
Yeah.
because like you said, I really haven't benchmarked it against anybody else for
Happy
a
to do it.
long time.
And we do it for free, right? And we'd never share your
So how
information.
do you do that? I mean, what all would you need?
Yeah, great question. So so I'll give you the technical terms just in case they're referenced. You need your 404A disclosure. That's the disclosure that goes to the employees. Your 408B2, it's yours. That's the disclosure that goes to the employer.
For what?
404A is the employee, 408B2 is the employer. And then like a plan level allocation, probably. So a list of like your total assets by fund. There's a great, so I worked at a record keeper before I came to security. I sought the security job. I think I told Eric the story. Like I knew that their sales guy in Chicago was moving back to Minnesota and I called him and said, can I have your job? And he goes, well, it's not as easy as it sounds, or you have to interview. Because I sought security because I knew what they did. And I was tired of all the games that record keepers played, like Eric referenced. Like I worked at a record keeper, before this. And when you saw the disclosures, it looked like somebody commented numbers on a page. Right? And if you were an employee, you'd be like, wow, that looks interesting, and you would throw it in the garbage. But they were getting nailed. We were not acting in their best interest at all. So understanding those at minimum, by going through this benchmarking, we're happy to tell you what you're currently paying, right? If it's cheap and it works for you, fantastic, right? Sit where you're at, right? But I think understanding those, so even with your current relationships, you should be saying, what does this all mean? Because there's a lot of hidden fees, there's a lot of, shell game stuff going on. So for example, I'll tell you something crazy. If you have a general account in a 401k plan or a stable value, that sometimes the record keeper can control the rate you're getting paid. And I can actually lower that rate so that I get a spread on those assets that are in there that I just keep. It's a hidden fee. Right? So like if a record keeper says, hey, great, it'll be cheaper if you use my general account, that's what they're doing. They're actually taking, so if you had $1 million and 10% of the money was in there, so $100,000, and you're, was in that, I'm making basically 10 basis points or 0.0010% on your money that you never saw. Right, so that's why reading those, understanding those disclosures is important. Because there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to money. Securian, the fees, because of our relationship with these guys, the fees that I disclosed to you are the only fees you're ever going to. There's nothing. And every time you log onto the website as an employer, and you click the button where it says investment snapshot, I'm telling you exactly what you're paying. So every day, that number adjusts based on the market, and you know exactly what you're paying.
Kind of to add up one more to that. So as I mentioned earlier about the revenue sharing, make sure it goes back to the participant. The reason why we partner up with Security, and it is something very unique that I have not seen anywhere else, is the fact that most of the record keepers we work with, and we told them, no, you're not going to keep it, we'll get back to participant. They do it usually about every 3 months. Security does it really unique where it's on a daily basis. That way, these are record keepers, they hold on to money for 3 months to keep the flow. That's another indirect compensation to them. Security says, no, on a daily basis, we give it back. Whether it's a penny, a dollar, whatever it might be, it goes right back to their account.
We're actually giving it to you before we get the money from the companies. Right, so we're actually giving it back to you before they pay us. Yeah, it's crazy. It's the Minnesota nice. How about when you do payroll? We actually invest that money immediately before we get the ACH. I'm like, don't we lose money sometimes? And the home office like, yeah, sometimes. I'm like, oh, these are nuts. Right? But it is just about always doing the right thing. That's the motto of the company, right? Is doing the right things today for secure my house. That's the ultimate goal. And to protect you guys. That's business owners.
Thank you.
Oh, this is great.
Sorry.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, definitely.